Thank you for joining us today. This is the Platform Fundamentals Academy. This is something new that we're starting this year. This is to pick up all of the fun little things that sometimes we forget to talk to you about. So we're bringing it to you front and center. My name is Tara Fisher. I will be the moderator for the session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A. It's easier for us to get through that, especially if they're hard ones. Let me know and I'll take you off of mute, and then you and Adam can have a great conversation. I'm going to let Adam take over from here. He is the director of our wonderful team, and we'll be talking to you today all about subscription management.
Great. And we are seeing the slide again?
Yes,
Yep.
we are. Looks good.
All right, good. Let's get started. So we are going to be talking today about subscription management, specifically subscription management version 2. And let's get to it. So first of all, subscription management V2 is out. Tara knows this, that I like to talk about. I let things slip that are coming out here. So I do want to make sure that we're aware. I'll call out if I'm talking about some of the things we're working on for the future, and some things that we're expecting to have in there. But do note that safe harbor, if something is not released, then please don't make any purchasing decisions based off of that. But again, I'll call out what we have today and then a couple of nuggets of things that are being worked on for future release. So today's goal, what are we here for? The goal I have for today is to understand what subscription management is and how to set up per user subscriptions. For subscription management, for the other subscription types, you don't need to set them up, but to get subscription management to work correctly, we do need to configure per user subscriptions. So we're going to talk about that. First of all, we're going to do an intro into subscription management. Then we're going to deep dive into understanding what a per user subscription is and how to configure it. We're going to briefly talk about how we set ourselves up for success using workflows in the system and governing our subscriptions. It's more than just a report. We're going to do a live demo. We're going to dive into subscription management V2, make sure you all can see that. And then we have some additional resources for you to go on and follow up for what we're doing. First of all, this is actually part 1 of a 3-part series. We did part 1 a couple years ago with subscription management V1. We're redoing it today with V2. But following on, we're going to briefly talk about these. But in addition to setting up per user subscriptions, we want to map our custom tables. And this session that we see here on the screen from a couple years ago talks about how do you set up and configure, map your custom tables, which is really important to get all the right numbers. So we want to do that as well. We'll briefly talk about it, but then you'll need to follow in about how do I do it a little bit more in that session. And the other part we'll talk about is workflows, about governing workflows. We are going to talk about some use cases on why this is important, but we spent an hour talking about this in the middle of last year on how do you configure this and how do you actually build this out. We're going to talk about that you need to build it out, you need these things, but we spent some time last August really walking through how do you build them. You'll want to watch both of those sessions as a follow-up to this one. Okay, let's get into subscriptions. ServiceNow has primarily 4 different types of subscription types. So when you buy something, it's going to be one of these types of subscriptions. So per user, that's where we're going to focus today. Per users, if you buy anything that's by per fulfiller, it's a per user, or some things will be by app user, it's per user. The user has the rights to do things. That's what you pay for. If I have the right to update an incident, if I have the right to edit or approve a case, those are per user things. They're managed by groups, and then they're audited by roles. We look at which roles you have, and then that's if you have the role that allows you to update an incident, update all incidents, then you need a fulfiller role for that. Other 3 types. Next one is unrestricted user. These are paired. It's very important you understand which one you have, and you'll see that in subscription management, whether you have a per user subscription or an unrestricted user subscription. The per user you're paying, if Thomas has the right and Tara doesn't, I pay for Thomas, I don't pay for Tara. In a different subscription, if Tara has the role that allows me to do this, I need to pay for Tara, but I don't have to pay for Thomas if he doesn't have it. Unrestricted user, you're buying it for everybody. It actually doesn't matter who can do what because it's more like an insurance policy. Everybody can do anything that you want them to do. It gives you lots of flexibility on what goes on. It just depends on how you purchased it. Things like ITSM Pro are sold both ways. It was up to you on how you wanted to buy it. But again, make sure you look at what you have and it's configured. You configure it that way. Unrestricted users, nothing for us to configure, just to understand per user. There are things to configure to make sure you understand who has which subscription. The next one that we have on the list is capacity. So our capacity metrics our capacity products are things that are sold by device or by transaction. We group those together because we're just counting things. Again, nothing for you to configure. There are some things for you to understand as we go through that. I want to, if I'm paying per subscription unit, you want to understand where your subscription unit's being used, being consumed, and is that what you want to have? They are being consumed. There were that many transactions. So it's really kind of understanding what the past was to understand how I want to go forward. Nothing to configure, but there is something to understand. And then you might see a subscription which is display only. We try not to have these, but there's some things, particularly with some custom SKUs or perhaps some products that you bought years ago that we're doing that we actually can't measure correctly in our system, and they'll be display only. You'll see that it's there, but there's nothing to configure. There's no actuals of what's being consumed. So if you see that, again, nothing to configure. The UU capacity and display only, there's nothing for you to configure. You're only seeing what's there. And then the per user, let's focus in on that. Because that you do need to configure so you can tell us how you want us to look at it. All right, so where we're going at with this too is we want to move from a reactive reporting, subscription reporting. That's where we have been in the past. If we get a use verification report, it's a report. This is your bill. Where there are overages, there are issues, and they're kind of all too late. Where we want to move with subscription management 2.0, with subscription management in general, is moving to a proactive subscription model where we're managing our subscriptions every day, every time I'm doing something. So there's no surprises. In subscription management, the word surprise is not a good word. My birthday's coming up. I like surprises for my birthday. I do not like them in my bills. So we want to make sure as we're going through today, we understand how to move from just looking at the subscription management reports to managing our subscriptions. It's a verb, right? We are managing them, not just reporting on them. There's a question that came in about unrestricted user, and it's not any paid roles. It's within this scope. So if I have ITSM, if I bought an ITSM unrestricted user, any of the ITSM roles, yes, you can use for our users. So you're fine. It doesn't matter if Tara has access to ITIL and Thomas has access to ITIL and Lisa does not have access to ITIL. We're all paying the same to come through, so you can really be free with what you're entitling. Beyond that, that wouldn't carry over to CSM. That wouldn't carry over to legal services, to incident response. Each one of the SKUs can be purchased that way, and you can talk to your account rep about what could be mixed and matched. But you really have the choice of whether I want to pay per user and manage which users have access. And then I do need to be much more judicious and have governance around who gets the roles. If I have an unrestricted user, it's a lot easier to administer. It is a lot easier to administer, but it doesn't carry over to everything at ServiceNow. We don't have a SKU that I'm aware of that is the everything SKU. You're still buying each product, but inside of that product, it's whether you have to be really how judicious do you need to be about your the roles that each user gets.
Did you see the next one that came in?
Yes. So there is a question about approvers and business stakeholders. I'll get to that at the end about how that kind of works.
So you got cleared that. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We'll definitely come back to that. There's some enhancements that are going to make that better, and so when we get to those, we'll talk about. All right, proactive user-based subscription management. So again, surprises. Surprises are bad. I am curious if anybody likes to have surprises on their bills and what comes through. I do not. So we want to prevent surprises. Highly recommend we use a service catalog item to manage group membership. So an admin can just add users to groups. There'll be cases where I like to delegate to group managers in a lot of ways to go, if you want Lisa in your group, then let Lisa into your group. Adding roles to groups, which do give all those users those roles. I see a lot of places where I just put a take it in for the admin and they just do it. We have to put some governance into that, because adding a new user to a role will have an impact on your licensing, or it might. We need to look at that. Adding a role, if I add ITIL or SN incident right to a group, everybody in that group now has exposure to needing an ITSM fulfiller license or a CSM fulfiller license. So it's important that we are checking for those things, looking at these things. You can't do it. A human can't do it. There's too much. There's too much. If I only have ITSM, if I only have 100 users, maybe I can do it. Sure. But as we're looking towards supporting thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users, and we have multiple products with thousands of roles that come through, you just can't know everything that's there. So it's really important we use the power of the platform. We use a flow in the background that's checking. If Tara already has a subscription for ITSM, then I don't care if I give her another role that has ITSM. She's already all set. If Thomas does not have a role and needs that role, now I need to figure out, do I have a spot for him? Do I want to pay for a role for him? Does he really need that? Is there something else I can do? All things that the flow can check for us. So we want to, let's go through some more examples of what we want to be looking at. Before I do that, let's talk about group. Let's talk about groups as we go through these.
Did you see that question that came in? How do we easily determine whether the user still needs a per user license, as in ITSM or IRM?
We'll go through. We'll talk about that a little bit more about how do we do it in the flow.
Okay.
If they have one or don't have them, and we get the demo, let's spend some time looking at that. There's all the metadata is in the system. So we'll have our flow look at the metadata and determine, do I have one or do I not have one? And then there's two questions, but I'm not sure which one we're asking. One, do I need one? And two, do I have one? Because if I don't need one, it doesn't matter if I have one. If I do need one, then I need to check if I have one. And those are different paths. So subscriptions are managed by per user subscriptions are managed by groups. So what do I mean by groups? I mean groups. If you have your sysadmin certification, you should be very familiar with groups. It's the same thing. Groups allow you to we already put our users in groups. We already give our roles to groups, and we have our entitlements associated to those same things as well. So groups are groups, sysuser group. When we say groups, there's nothing special beyond this other than I have users, they have rights, and now we're mapping which subscription they go to. If I only have one subscription, if I only have ITSM, life's pretty simple. It can get a little complicated when I have CSM and ITSM because the same role, the same access can actually be paid for through different SKUs, through different subscriptions. And so that's why we have it here to tell me which one you want me to bill this to. There's some more thinking to do, and let's talk about what we need to do. Why do we have groups? Why are we using groups? Why aren't we doing something else? First thing is it's a security best practice not to assign roles. So I do see in some customers, especially early on, assigning roles directly to users. It's super easy to just go, Lisa needs ITIL, give Lisa ITIL. Again, security would recommend you don't do that. We always want to use groups for mostly the same reasons we're looking at it for entitlement management, but we want to avoid directly assigning roles. There are a few kind of system roles that are okay to do that for, but we generally want to avoid that. The next is roles provide access and groups provides context. So a role, ITIL, is just ITIL. I have no idea why you have ITIL. I just know you have ITIL. So if I am trying to look and see, Thomas has ITIL, but it's weird. I don't know why he has ITIL. I still don't know. Maybe there's a request record somewhere that has it. Maybe there's a case that has it about why he was in there. Super hard to figure out. And that's, if we got a surprise, like, hey, these 200 users, I'm 200 users over, and now I need to review 2,000 users to figure out who should have one and who shouldn't. If I did direct role access, this is a very, very complicated problem. Very, very challenging. We want to avoid that. If I have it in groups, well, now I can slice and dice and figure out, well, why does this group have access? This group I know needs to have access, so we're good. This group needs to have it. This group, I don't know why this group has it, so let's go figure that out. It allows me to break down my sets of users to manageable groups. And that leads me to the last point that we have on here is groups have managers and roles don't. This allows me to use something like data certification in the platform. Super easy to configure. I think we've been able to configure this in about 10 minutes to set up an audit, just like we would do for resources for CMDB items, for CIs, and say, hey, group manager, I want you to validate that everybody in your group needs to be in your group. Number one, great security best practice, just a good housekeeping. Everybody in your group need to be in your group. Number two, Does your group need all these roles? Does your group need ITIL? Does your group need case read? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but the group manager really should know that. And then the third thing, he goes, well, assuming that you have the right people in here, that you have the right access and the right roles, is this the right subscription we should be associating this to? If there's two, am I picking the right one? Should it be CSM or should it be ITSM? There's some overlap between different products, and I want to know which ones that they want to have. For the most part, we try to avoid that, but there are cases where it makes sense that there's some overlapping functionality and you'll need to choose. If I'm validating that, I'm not going to be surprised. And if I am over, it's because I need to be over. My groups have grown. They need more access. But I'm able to validate that and justify that by delegating it out and asking the right people. I don't know about you, but I do not want to be asked, okay, can you review this list of 2,000 people, 3,000 people, 10,000 people, and make sure that everybody's right? But if I have 1,000 people, then I'm going to have 50 groups, 20 groups, 50 groups, 100 groups. Each one of those group managers is going to be able to say, yes, my group is correct. I can build some custom process for this. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if I use data certification, very quickly, I can get that on. And I can be doing this review every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, have that as a normal start of my process to certify my groups are right. The subscriptions I have are correct. And whether I need fewer, whether I need more, I have that justification done, and I can get that done very quickly. And I can show my finance department, look, I really do need this. And I know who to question if I have any questions. So having groups, having the managers, giving that context that as a description, of course, the service desk needs ITSM subscriptions. That's not a hard sell. Why does finance need it? Maybe they can use business stakeholder instead of ITSM subscriptions. Great question to ask. And now I have those blocks to do it. Okay, so we're going to go through some few examples for this, but as we've talked about before, if I have 1,000, I have 2,000 seats I need to audit. We're going to audit with data certification. Great way of doing it. We'll show that in the demo really quickly, and then leverage those groups and those periodic audits. I cannot stress this enough. If you do this, you're going to be in much better shape for understanding your subscriptions, justifying your subscriptions, managing your subscriptions. This is the secret. Enforcing limits comes in.
I'm sorry. We had a pretty good question come in just now. How is there currently a way, or is it on the roadmap to determine if someone is actually using a license? That's a good question.
See, that would have been a good one to put in the chat that I could ignore. All right, so let's talk about that really quick. So no, the answer is no. The answer is no at this point. We're focused in with ServiceNow. We sell the right to use. So can I do something? If I can update an incident, then you need to pay for the right to do that. It's how our pricing is based. That's how we sell, not in the actual use. If I was looking for actual use, it can be really challenging between a fulfiller and a requester, because I can tell that Thomas updated an incident. What is really difficult to tell is, did he update his incident or did he update my incident? Because my incident requires a fulfiller license. His incident does not. Right? He can update his own incident, submit his own incident. What I would do for that, if I'm looking for that, is I'm going to look for anybody who has not updated an incident at all. Not an update for ITSM. I'm sorry, I'm ITSM specific. But I'm going to look for anybody who has not updated an incident, problem, change, or request. If you haven't updated any of those in 6 months, you're probably not fulfilling. You probably don't need a license. What's challenging is, if you're not on there, that's my list that I want to review. And then I actually want to look at the groups and go, what groups gave you this access? Right? Groups give you this access. If I've only updated one, then we'll look at a little bit more at it. But what I'm really going to look for is like the number of updates, instance, problems, changes by group. And then I'm going to identify groups that don't need access. If you get down to single people, it's weird to have a group in the service desk and one person not update incidents, right? Not incidents, problems, right? My problem managers do more problems. My incident managers, my service desk does more incidents. But I want to have the manager go, yeah, that's because this person's been on leave for 3 months. We didn't remove them because they're going to come back. I don't want to pull that person out. And that's where we really put the emphasis on the group manager saying, yeah, they need access and it's the right group. If you have a group with 1,000 people, it's going to be pretty challenging, right? We have the same problem. So we want to have manageable groups, reasonable size, that the group manager actually knows who's in there and they actually know what this group does. If your groups are just, if you have a group called ITSM fulfillers and anybody can just get put in it, we're going to have a mess. And we really do have to look at who's doing what. But if we've structured our groups in a way to help us do work, have really meaningful assignment groups, if we have structured our groups that they're a size that the group manager actually knows who's in there, then using the data certification gives us a much better approach than actually looking at who did it and who didn't do it. But there are ways. Again, if you haven't updated it, if you haven't logged on in 6 months, we got a different problem, right? Why are you in the service desk and not even logged on? If you're in the, if you haven't updated an incident problem change, I wouldn't necessarily take your license back, but I would probably ask the manager again, what's going on. Maybe I'll do a data certification and provide that information to go, these people have only done this many. Do you still want them in here? If I only update one incident a year, maybe I need to not have you in the service desk group because you just needed to do something random. Again, perhaps looking at business stakeholder. I can talk about this for a really long time. I'm probably going to move on a little bit and make sure I can get through the rest of some of these examples. If you have more, if we get to the end, we can talk some more about some of these questions and how to manage them. The question came in about custom fulfiller roles. We'll get to that in the demo. So let's get through this a little bit more. We're doing okay on time. Enforcing limits. ServiceNow doesn't enforce hard limits. So we do check to make sure you can't install a plugin or an app if you're not entitled to it. We try to block you there. But users, and we're specifically talking about per users, if you have 1,000 seats and you go to 1,001, we're not going to stop you. One, it's really hard, but we're not going to stop you. We're not, our philosophy is we do not want to break business continuity. We'll figure it out later, right? We don't want to break you. If you need an extra 100 licenses and you go over, do it, right? And then we'll true up and we'll get square. Everything will be fine. But we don't block adding somebody to a group because it would push you over. If you want to do that, which is a good idea to do, you need to do it and you need to decide how you want to do it. And you're going to do it with a workflow. You're going to do it with the governance. So you want to be in a place where users do not get added to a group unless it runs through my flow, probably through a service catalog. I do not want my admins or user admins just adding users to groups because they don't necessarily know all of the impacts that are coming in. A flow can check all of those things. If you want to go over, I don't want you to be in a place where I have 1,000 seats. I need 1,002. Now go figure out right now who you're going to pull out. It's not pleasant for anybody. It's not a great thing. So we're going to let you go over, and then you can figure out who to remove later, right? Or buy more licenses, whatever the answer is going to be. But you want to enforce that governance through a workflow on adding users to groups and by adding roles to groups. Those are both done in prod. You want a workflow in prod that does it. Don't have your admins do it directly. All right, this is a side note. This is for customers who've been around. And if you haven't looked at it, this is old. Hopefully you don't need to worry about this, but I just want to bring it up still. User sets. So in the New York, Orlando, Paris timeframe, I think we entered these in Paris, we had something called user sets. And it was an attempt to manage subscriptions by user to really let you do all of this magic about, I want this group, but I want this set of users to have this and this set of users to have that. It was super hard to maintain. It was too hard to maintain. When we moved to Quebec, we took all of your user sets and we converted them to groups. This was a temporary measure to keep kind of some of the numbers consistent. If you see a group mapped to a subscription that starts with LIC USR SET, which is engineering for license user set. License user set. They don't contain any roles. They were just a mapping of the user sets to come through. If you see them, it means you haven't really configured anything. We did something with user sets pre-Paris, pre-Quebec, and then we migrated them. It's not good. If I see that, it means that I thought I configured subscription management, but I did not configure subscription management, and I haven't even looked at it in the last few years. So if you see those groups, we need to figure out how to get rid of them and use our real groups that we actually use, right? I don't have an assignment group called license user set. I hope I don't have an assignment group called that. We want to use the real groups we use to manage our business. Okay, there's some more information on here, but they were designed to be temporary, and that temporary is long since expired. We didn't remove them, but if you did not remove them, please go back and let's configure subscription management the right way. I have lots of plugs for stuff we've talked about. I showed this before, but again, there's another part of the series about mapping custom tables. Really important to do, and how to do it and how to approach it and what gets configured where. I'd recommend go watching that academy as well. And then flows. Let's talk about flows in a little bit more detail. So flows, we want to flow when I'm adding users to groups, when I'm adding roles to groups. And I thought I actually replaced this slide. This is an example flow, which I need to update for Workflow Studio. This is still the old Flow Designer version. You want to go through this and you want to build a flow. You want to use a flow. We'll get in a little, well, let's get in. A couple of things we want to think about when we're building those flows. Who needs to approve the license? So subscriptions themselves actually don't have an approver. Who approves it? Who approves my ITSM? Who approves my CSM subscription if I want to be added to it? Does the group manager approve it before or after? Do I want to do the security side first, the appropriateness, the security, the entitlement? So do I want to ask the manager, hey, Tara, is it okay to add Thomas into this? If Tara's the manager, or do I want to ask Lisa, who's from finance, to go, will you pay for it? That's a very organizational specific change. You can ask them at the same time. You could ask them separately. You just need both. At the end of the day, you need to have both. But how you do that, make sure you have in your org who you want to get asked. Because sometimes finance doesn't want to be asked if the group manager says no. In other cases, the group manager doesn't want to get asked unless the license is already cleared. Do I want to configure pre-approvals? I'm a fan of pre-approvals. To say if you're in the IT department and you want an ITSM subscription, then yes, you're fine. Like there's no problem. If the group manager is in ITSM, is in the IT department, and they've requested to have an ITSM subscription added to it, just do it, because that's what they're there for. But if I'm in marketing and I want to use an ITSM subscription, maybe I want to get that approved someplace else. I like a pre-approval, so I don't have to ask questions. I'm always going to say yes to. Whether it's the who needs a license, whether it's the pre-approvals, whether it's thumbs up. If you can tell, I use a Mac. I love that one. When we're going through all these things, decision tables and flows are your friend. They are amazing. They make this so easy to do. Before decision tables, I had to create custom tables and do some other stuff and configure a lot more. I can now create a decision table. I have a decision table with each of my subscriptions listed as a pick list. I have who's going to approve it. Really simple for my user admin to manage all of this stuff in my flow super quickly, really easily. It's awesome. And then what do I do if it's fully allocated? Now, this is really where you need to figure out, what does your organization want to do? Do I have a hard limit? I have 1,000 seats. I want to go to 1,001. Does it just go no? No. And I've talked to customers, and that's the answer. We will not go out of compliance. No, you do have to go figure out who you're going to bump to get that other seat. I kind of like how do we break glass? So yes, or the answer is no, or it's going to go get approval from my CIO, right? Maybe ask, like, we're at in the service catalog to go, there are no more seats for this. Are you okay escalating this to the CIO? I don't want to ask my CIO, is it okay if I can add Lisa to this group? But you need to figure out what you want to have, right? Maybe it's just that we do need additional approvals. And then what's the process? Like, if I know I'm going over, I'm adding a group and I'm adding 20 more users to something and I need to do it, great, again, do it. Let's get it done. Can I then reach out to ServiceNow to say, hey, we do need to true up. Let's get this up. We know we're going over. Let's get that process in place to buy some more licenses. All of these things are things we need to think about.
Hey, we have
more detail.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to pause you for a second. We have a ton of questions coming in. I don't know if you want to take a break and answer some of these, or do you want to just save them towards the end?
We'll take a break and go through them. I'll put my plug in here. What we just talked about is covered a lot more detail on how we build this. I think we built it live, or we showed some live examples in this webinar from August. Again, we talked about building those flows. The secret to subscription management are these flows. So we'll go back and watch that on how do we do this in more detail. And I'm looking forward to redoing that one with Workflow Studio and more use of decision tables. Some great stuff. Also with that one, I believe we did a lab at Knowledge 23 about building out these workflows, and with data certification. That lab's not live, but the lab guide is there. So if you're interested in doing it and you go watch the webinar, you go find this go to the Academy page. I think you'll find the lab guide, which will let you walk through, really see some deep examples of this. All right, let's go through some questions. We're going to talk about the who needs a license a little bit more in a moment. Custom fulfiller roles we'll talk about in the demo. Oh, the use by the comment that came in about the use by, about who's updated an incident, who hasn't. Yeah, it's a problem that updated by. If I'm always the first person, but there's always somebody who comes after me, then the updated by doesn't get it. There are some other ways you could look at the audit to come through. It's totally valid. That's why I wouldn't automatically say if you haven't updated an incident, problem, or change in the last 90 days, remove your ITSM subscription. One, you're not. You actually have to remove them from a group that gives them the subscription, which is weird. If I'm in an assignment group and I just get removed from that, that's weird. So I don't know a good path of doing it anyway. But generally, if you're fulfilling and I'm paying what I'm paying for you to be able to fulfill, and you're never, and there's just no records where you were the updated by, then there is a chance for error, but I think it'd be pretty small. If you only updated one incident in the last 6 months, and somebody came by and updated it since you did, and the system might have as well, then we have a problem. If you're auto closing, then maybe that's doing it. There's not a perfect way of doing it, but that's the way I would do it, because it would give me a list of candidates. And if I've seen that you have updated 20, 30, 100 incidents, cases, problems, whatever it is, then you're not on my questionable list. The questionable list is when I don't see any evidence that you've had. It doesn't mean you haven't updated them. It just means I don't have any evidence that you have. There is a presumption of innocence. But yes, again, we don't have a way of doing it. We don't have a great way of doing it to tell you who fulfilled and who didn't, which is what the question really is. Yeah, so a question came in about as I said, don't let your this was talking about user manager. There definitely are a few roles. I thought it was usage admin, but there's a few roles, including admin and some lower levels, that let you just add users to groups. Yeah, you need to have that, but we really need to treat them like admin. I want very, very few admins, like people with the admin role in production. I want very, very few people having access to just add people to groups. There is a reason for it. There's a use case. I might have to break some glass and do it. So I'm not saying no, but that should not be my process. My process should be using a flow for administering things. I don't want to give every manager access to do that. In the past, you may have been right here been here a long time. I was a big proponent of saying, hey, if you put an ACL in on sysgr member user, the group membership table, to basically allow managers or a backup manager to just manage their own groups. Why do I need to put a request in? If I own the group, let me just add users to the group. I wouldn't do that anymore. I just ostensibly wouldn't do that anymore. Minimally, I wouldn't do it if the group has a subscription associated to it. That might be the key. If there's no subscription associated to it, go ahead and do whatever you want, because it might just be used for sharing reports. It's fine. So whether I'm keying it off of group type, whether I'm keying it off of group type, whether I'm keying it on a new field I add to sys user group, whether I'm keying to it has subscriptions or not, you can say these ones you can manage, these ones you can't. It's perfectly fine. But if it has a subscription, I don't want users just messing with it, because you just can't have 100 managers messing with your subscriptions, right? These have financial impacts, and they may not be aware. We'll talk a little bit more about that, how to make them aware, but I want to really use flows for it. And we put easy paths in there. If the requester of the catalog item is the group manager, then the group manager is automatically approved, right? We can be really smart about it. And if the user I'm adding already has the subscription, then it's just done. It'll get done in seconds. But we need to make sure we go through all the checks. That one I answered. Another question came in here about custom tables. If you have custom tables showing up, if you have out of the box tables showing up in your custom table inventory, we'll see that in the demo. But if we're saying a table is custom and it's not custom, put a case in. We'll fix it. We've actually addressed this in Washington. So this should be very, very few and far between. We have a couple of I'm playing a little bit of whack-a-mole on a couple of things that were still getting put out, but we redid how we calculate what a custom table is in Washington, and that should go away on upgrade. But if even today, I don't care if you're running Tokyo, I do care if you're running Tokyo, but if you're on Tokyo and you see custom tables, I see out of the box tables in your custom table inventory, put a case in, we'll clean it. We'll exempt it. You can't, but our support team can do it, and we should be able to get that turned around in a day or two to come through that. And if you see them, whatever, if the custom table inventory is wrong, then put a case in and have us look at it. It's okay. I'm not discouraging from asking your SC, your account team, what's going on. But if anything in subscription management looks wrong to you, put a case in. A lot of times it's going to come to me, but I want to do that so that we really have a good inventory of what's going on. If you just ask me a question, if you ask me right now, I don't have access to see your system, but if we put a case in and I need to log into your system, then assuming it's okay with you, we'll be able to do it. But there's lots of controls in place so that we really can't help you with some of this stuff unless you put a case in. And another one comes in about the assigning roles to users. There are some system and some platform roles that get assigned directly to users. So SNC internal and external are my best examples of that. Knowledge does that. There's some security things that do it as well. Some other security things that just get assigned to users. They're fine. Knowledge doesn't have any licensing implications, so it's fine. But it's particularly those roles that are associated to licenses that matter. How is it associated to a license or not? That we talk about in the flows. The metadata is on your instance, and the flow can look to go, do I care? Do I not care? And that's really what you want to have. There are 3,000 or 4,000 out of the box roles. I don't know them all, and the name is not always as clear as you'd like it to be. It makes sense in context, but in the list of 3,000, it may not make sense. So you really need to rely on the metadata tables that are on the system to tell you, do I need to care or do I not need to care? It's not super hard to say you should never do it this way or never do it that way, particularly like SNC internal. It just applies to you either are internal, you are external. We don't need to manage that through groups. Some of the security settings, you either can do it or not do it, and it really is per user. It's fine too. But anything that's fulfiller based, anything that's per user based, we need to be very protective of and not have those go through direct role assignments. Okay. All right, I am going to go. We're going to continue on so I get some more time in the demo, and then we'll try to answer the rest of the questions as we get through. I have a few use cases, super quick. This is talked way more about in the workflow, and I will leave it there because they're literally the same slides. But as we're talking about a workflow, we want to make sure we're considering the user's current group membership. So again, if I already have an ITSM license, you can have incident manager and problem viewer and request write. You only use one seat. Inside of a subscription, it doesn't matter how many roles you have. It doesn't matter how many groups you're in. You only use one seat. It's all reduced down. We have a nightly job that reduces and looks at all your stuff and goes, I'm only going to count you once. So if I already have a license, then I don't care if I add to another one. Generally, I don't. They're actually, depending on order of when things come in, maybe you do care, or we want to do that in the periodic review. The transactional doing things in a request does not make up for a regularly scheduled audit. So I still want to do an audit every 6 months. I still want to do that. But as we're moving in, if you have a license, then you're not going to use another one. You don't cost me anything. As long as the group manager's okay, I'm okay. Department, again, I'm a big fan of pre-approvals because it just reduces the noise of what I want to have. If you're already in the IT department, I'll give you the IT role. If you're in talent management and you want some HR role, maybe I'll do that too, even without the licensing, but just pre-approve it to come in. I don't necessarily want to grant it automatically to come through, particularly if it is per user, because I don't want to pay if you don't need it. But if you ask for it, you're automatically going to get it. The subscriptions, the groups are associated too. So again, if a group has no roles, a group has no subscriptions, and definitely has no roles, it's just used for sharing dashboards. I don't care. Have fun. Do whatever you want to do. The type of subscription. So if it's UU, we talked about this earlier. If it's UU, I actually don't care who gets it because I'm paying for everybody. So it's fine. Even though it's ITSM, I bought ITSM on unrestricted user model, meaning I can give ITIL to all of my users. Horrible idea, but I want to do it. You're entitled to do that. So the type really matters, right? Not just the role, not just the department, but the type. Because if I bought ITSM based on unrestricted user, but CSM fulfiller based, then I need to be protective, have a lot of governance on CSM roles, CSM only roles, but ITSM roles, I can be a lot more lax on because it's covered already. And then the current subscription allocation. Do I have any more seats? You use fine, but for the fulfiller ones, I'm using 105 out of 100 seats. Maybe I want to make sure that I'm getting that extra level of approval because that we all know we're out of compliance and we need to start a conversation with ServiceNow before they start a conversation with us. So all those are important things. There might be other ones, but these are the ones I focus in on. And then that gives me things, should not have the black text on here, about what department am I in, what subscription is it, and then which approvals do I need. And as I go through these use cases, which I'm not going to talk in a lot of detail about, what I want you to see is I'm changing one little piece of it, and the approvals needed changes. What we see over on the right with the approvals needed changes. Maybe I need the just the group manager. I'm always going to need the group manager. Do I need the subscription owner? Do I need the user's manager? So in this example, I want Leanne's manager to say, yeah, I do want Leanne to have this access. The subscription owner who owns ITSM Pro goes, yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that, even though they're not in my department. It's fine. The group manager who actually owns the service desk, actually owns the database users, they're also saying yes because they're the ones who are kind of getting the bill. And if I have the Leanne's manager is important if I'm getting charged back. All the same request. I want to add this user to this group, but the approvals change. Who it goes to, whether it's dynamically based on the group manager or backup manager. When I'm using decision table to configure some kind of overall groups, that flow is important. If I just ask an admin, it's going to be challenging. All right, a couple other really key points as we go through. Use verification reports and subscription management and ServiceNow provided use verification reports. They are slightly different. Really important to understand the differences. We are working to get rid of these differences so they aren't there, but they are today. So I want you to know about it. If the number you see in subscription management can differ from the use verification report we're using for a renewal or a true up, whatever's going to come through. Couple key points. So active users, we only count active users. That's actually the same for both, but I just want to let you know that if a user becomes inactive, they should drop off of both subscription management and use verification reports the next day. Next, users not logged in within the last 365 days. In subscription management, you'll see those users. It might be something you want to investigate as to why do I have users and groups that have not logged in to the system at all in the last 365 days. Again, if I'm doing a periodic audit, this is not a problem because I probably don't want those people. Why do I have active users who have not logged in the last 365 days in my service desk? It's a bit weird, and I want to ask some questions. If I'm doing that audit with all my group managers, they'll probably have already been taken care of. The use verification reports actually drop them out right now, but subscription management, you'll see them, so the number goes down. The use verification numbers actually have a lower number. Web service users only. Use verification drops them out. Subscription management still shows them as well. And then direct role assignments. This is the one where it's inverting. If you have a lot of direct role assignments, which are not good for many, many reasons, but if you have them, subscription management doesn't see them today. This is one of those things that we are working on very, very actively. But today, subscription management won't see them, but use verification will see them, and we'll give you a bill for them. So some of these things have use verification showing you a lower number than subscription management. And the bottom one is the inverse. We are working very, very hard to get rid of these and reconcile all this stuff for you. But I just want you to know, if you get a use verification report today, you set subscription management up perfectly today, you still will see a few differences. They're accounted for. There is a KB article that's actually listed right there that'll walk you through how to identify those differences, but they do exist. All right, and now I have my demo. So let's make sure that this demo works correctly. All right, and it's not sharing. All right, let's get it. Okay, seeing my web browser?
Yes.
Okay, it's on my wrong monitor, so I'm gonna turn off my video so you don't see the side of my head for the whole time. Okay, so we are on a Washington instance right now. And I'm just on my normal Washington instance to go through. Let's get to subscription management. So I'm going to come up to the navigator bar and I'm going to type in subscription management. Click on subscription management. And we have a nice, beautiful interface that will load in just a moment. The note about availability. So subscription management 2.0, which is what we're looking at today, is available for Vancouver patch 5 and above in the store. You can go to the store and search for it and install subscription management version 2. Vancouver patch 5 and above. Vancouver patch 5 came out in December. And once you get patch 5, you should be able to grab this and install it. Washington uses subscription management 2.0. If you're on Vancouver patch 4 or below, or on Utah, you don't have access to this yet, but it'll be coming. And once you get to Washington, it's just installed by default. You don't have anything to do. But in Vancouver patch 5 and above, you can go install this today if you want. All right, so a couple of things that we're going to see. Insights. Insights is really important. This is a big ad from what we had before. We're looking at lots of potential issues and telling you things you need to do. Whether you have more room to grow, or you have a problem we need to address, we're going to surface that in insights. Unmapped global custom tables and unmapped table custom applications. Well, let's go into that real quick. So we talked about the custom table inventory before. And what we had to do before was kind of click in some stuff, go edit the inventory. We're now looking at your custom table inventory and identifying what do you need to do. And so I have 4 custom tables that I have not mapped, and we make a recommendation on which subscription they have. The subscription right now is generally App Engine. This is being improved so that if we're working to improve this with my safe harbor so that it can make some more relevant recommendations, which might be, it might be App Engine. App Engine is kind of always an issue, an option, but it might be recommending if I extended the case table, I probably want to map that to customer service management. If I'm extending CSM case, makes sense it's case. If I'm extending problem, it's probably ITSM. But if I have CSM and ITSM, then it's one of those two. Pick that. Probably not App Engine. But we're making those recommendations to come through. In the past, we didn't have any recommendations, but we built in a new recommendation engine into V2 to make this easier for me. And then I can click on it and map it to that table. The mapping table one talks about this in more detail, but a custom table in global is mapped at the table level. A custom table that's in an app, whether it's a global app or a scoped app, you map the entire app, which makes life much easier for me. If I have 300 custom tables in global, I have to map each and every one of those separately, which is a bit time consuming. If I have an app, though, I just map the app and it's there. I recommend, if you have a bunch of global custom tables, to put them into a global app. And then it makes I do that once, and then managing it is much easier. Same thing happens with source control. It's just easier to manage. I don't like having all these singletons in global, and I put them into a global app. But again, here, these are custom apps that have custom tables, and they're actually, it's a bit of a misnomer. There's custom tables in apps. If I go into a ServiceNow scope and I create a table, I did that here. I went into Service Portal Surveys. That's not a custom app. That is an out-of-the-box app, but I added a custom table to it, one or more. I'm then going to need to map that app to one of my subscriptions. Okay, so those are a couple key actions that I need to take once I want those to be 0. Let me go back to my overview, and then I have my subscriptions down here. So let's talk about what my subscriptions have. Keynote, as I call it in here, while everything is always perfect all the time, if you see something, say something. And there's a link here to help you just go over to support and create a case. If you are missing a subscription you expect, if the number is not correct, if you see something that you don't think is right or you have a question about, put a support case in and let us help you. I don't want you to suffer in silence. The sooner you get that case in, the sooner we're going to be able to answer it for you. Not all the account teams know all of the nuances that come in with every subscription and how it shows up. So again, don't be afraid to put that case in. So I have my subscriptions in here. I have my status that shows everything looks good. I have how many purchased, how many I've allocated. Right now, I haven't configured anything here, so my allocation is 0. In capacity, you actually might see a -1. If you see a -1, put a case in. It means that the query to get the counts is not working correctly. Zeros, my per user subscription. 0 means I haven't configured anything. It means that if you haven't configured it, it doesn't know what to look at. But we've gone to make the configuration easier. So I'm going to go into ITSM Professional. And on this instance, I do have users that have roles that require subscription. So here in my subscription, this was really fast this morning. Zoom just likes to make my instance go slower. Okay, so this is loading. I have that this is ITSM Pro at the top. I see it's per user. I see that we're counting fulfiller users, and I have the dates that when the subscription comes up for renewal. I'm all pretty good with those things. And as this loads, I'm going to see a summary of what I've purchased versus allocated, that history over time. And then insights. So we had insights overall, but we're also going to see those insights show up per subscription. When this decides to come up. Once this comes up, we're going to go through and look at all the information it's providing. The information that's provided does differ depending on the subscription type. For an unrestricted user, there is no ability to map groups because you don't need to map groups. They don't show you a bunch of extraneous information. Each one of these will look different. So if I looked at ITSM Pro Fulfiller, it will look different than ITSM Pro Unrestricted User. Now, as a customer, I only see one or the other. But if you are looking at different production instances, whether you have multiple or whether you're working with different customers, it can differ. Okay, so I have some insights in here that I still have a bunch of seats because I haven't done anything, and I can start allocating. I have my history that comes through of my custom tables. I have a bunch of spots left over. This will also show if you're over allocated. And then I have a historic trend of that data as well that's loading. And then we're going to get to the subscriptions or the groups, roles, applications once this loads. And while this last part is loading, it should not take this long on your instance, but my demo instance it is. Let me see if there's a couple other questions that we can cover. One of them, has anybody moved to been successful moving to a job role type access provisioned by some other access system? Yes, I definitely see that, right? Where my groups are managed just straight out of AD and I don't have ServiceNow groups. That's fine. You'll have to go figure out how to clean that up when it comes through, whether you manage the entitlements also in that system, or you have some business rules that just do it. That you can be successful. The secret is not that you use a flow. The secret is not that you do anything a specific way. It's that you have governance. I don't care what you do as long as you have governance. So if I'm using SailPoint or Active Directory managing all my groups, and anybody can ask for anything, then I have a mess to clean up at the end. But if I have governance and approvals, you're fine. It works really well in ServiceNow, but that doesn't mean it has to be built into ServiceNow. Okay, so let's talk about what's loaded in here. So I have my subscribed groups. Right now I have nothing. After that, we're going to come back and do that. My subscribed users, because I have no groups, I have no users. A key difference I can add groups and remove groups. I cannot add and remove users. We do not manage users one or the other, or we don't manage users one at a time. It does not scale. It does not work. There are some challenges when you do have some really weird group design, and it can be a challenge when we roll this out. If we've never had governance, putting in governance is a process. It's something we have to work through, but it'll be better in the end for many reasons. Bundled items as we come through. So in subscriptions and subscription management 2.0, we added some more visibility into what you can see. So not in the subscription before in V1, you'd only see how many users I purchased. But with ITSM Pro, there's also a number of VA conversations and custom tables. That visibility is here now. So as you have subscriptions that have multiple measures, you'll see those as well under these bundled items. My custom tables, I'll see the custom tables I've mapped. I haven't mapped any, they won't show up. We saw those in the ones that need to be mapped. If I mapped them to ITSM, they would show up here, so I can see these tables go with the subscription. Again, we spend more time talking about this, but when you map a custom table, what you are doing is saying, I want you to treat this table like it is an out-of-the-box table for this subscription. So if it's a UU subscription, we treat it like UU. If it is per user, if it's a fulfiller based, we treat it with the same fulfiller that come through. The subscribed applications, subscription applications, this is a list of all the applications that are entitled by this application, which I don't know. I actually didn't look at this earlier, so I don't know if this is missing data or it's just loading. We'll give it a second to load. But this for ITSM is going to show me incident, problem, change, walk up. There's 20 or 30 different applications that this comes with. It will show me those different applications, which I can then go look into the plugins to see what I can activate and what I cannot activate. It is loading. Oh, there we go. So those we have the applications. Then I have the roles. Really great information for us. In my flow, I'm going to use this table to say if somebody wants, somebody is asking for the change management role, I'm going to see that that's part of change management. That's a fulfiller for ITSM Pro, and I am charged for fulfiller. So the change manager role, which I didn't go on, which was the change manager role, I do want to have the subscription manager, it's a subscription management manager group, identify this. Quick call out on roles. We had this about custom roles. In Vancouver, there is a new API that's in here called the Role Analyzer. And what we are working on to do, the ground has been laid, the groundwork has been laid. What we're starting to do is analyze the ACLs on your instance as you're configuring them, which will help us populate this. So when you customize ACLs, whether you're adding a custom role, whether you're using an out-of-the-box role on a custom table, whether you're using an out-of-the-box role on a different out-of-the-box role, we are analyzing that to show here, this is a requester and this is a fulfiller. That's not here yet. It's not all connected, but we are moving towards that very quickly so that as you make customizations on your sub-prod, as you make, and they move into prod, you will have that visibility. And whether you created it or we created it, you'll have the visibility on what requires a license and why. So that is coming with my safe harbor. We are actively working on that to come through. And when that's ready, you'll start to see it displayed in here. You also see your purchase history on what you purchased and the entitlements that come through as it goes through over time. Let's talk about groups. We're going to show this really quickly. This is awesome. One of the best thing. This is the best thing in subscription management 2.0. In V1, it just gave me a list of all my groups and I had to know what to do. Now what we are doing is we are looking at those roles we just looked at, and we are looking at all the groups that have those roles and saying, hey, these groups have the roles that need this license, but you haven't added them to this license. Do you want to do that? And I can come in and say, yeah, I do want to add these two. I'm not going to add the cab approvals because I'm going to add those to CSM. So be aware that you still have to decide if you have overlap, which one you want to put it into. I'm working to make that a little bit more visible. But I have hundreds of roles, hundreds of groups on this instance. And it said these 4 have these users and come through. So I'm going to add these groups and that will add that on here. And then my users might show up tomorrow. Let's see. So that will add that in there and come through. Again, my instance is a little bit slow. So before we get into that, I want to have a couple more call outs and then we'll get to some questions. There, my groups have shown up to come through, and the users did immediately too. It is smart enough to know I added the groups to go calculate the users. And if I look here, I have 83 users. Does that add up to 83, 70? I think that adds up to more than 83. I'm not going to do the math, but I think it does. And that's because we are distincting out. So again, if a user is in multiple of these groups, they'll be fine. Okay, so we've done that with the users, all managed through here. It's easy. It's picking out which groups you have. A couple other call outs in here while we're here. The data certification app. There is a new version of this, and I have not. There was a new version just released with CMDB. I have not redone this, but the old one is still here. Super easy to do, no custom development. You can configure a data certification task. We'll go ask your managers if this is correct. If you go watch the workflow webinar, we talk about it, and the lab has it in there as well. The subscriptions. So those recommendations, whether it's recommending the groups, the subscriptions for the tables or the groups, there's a nightly job that runs. So as I'm making changes, if I'm adding roles to groups one at a time, it's not going to have me, it's not going to show me the recommendations immediately. That job runs. I can come in and run the licensing engine job. There's a few other ones about the table recommender, but if I go run those jobs, I can then see the subscriptions. Again, we're working on that to make it a little bit smarter. But today there are some jobs that run daily to help populate this. If I go in and look at this once a week, I can make any adjustments that I have. But if I'm working and adding users and groups real time, I might need to force those jobs to run. Okay, and we'll come back. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, let's switch over.
So I will just say real quick, we are at the top of the next hour, but we are more than happy to stay on. If you have the time, please stay on with us. We will try to get through all of these questions, and then this will be posted on the community in about a week, the recording, if you have to drop.
All right, but I'm going to keep talking. So in here we have, this is in the store. A question came up about Vancouver, Washington. So once you have Vancouver patch 5, you should be able to get subscription management v2 in the store. Once you're in Washington, it's only here, and you should see the interface I just saw. I believe it looks the same in the modules for Vancouver and for Washington. Really important for the store because of this. We can iterate much faster. So in the past, we were tied to family releases. So if we had to fix anything other than patches, if we had to add anything new, you had to upgrade to get it. By us putting it in the store, it allows us to address new store requirements, iterate faster, and come in. If you just upgrade your family release, you'll get the latest version at that time. But there might be cases where you want to go get the new subscription management. We have a lot of enhancements planned for the foreseeable future. So it's always something that this app, if it's going to make your life easier, make sure you stay tuned to keep your ear to what the new enhancements are for subscription management. And because we're in the store, it doesn't mean you always have to upgrade to Washington. In this case, is a good example. You don't have to be on Washington to get the latest version. If you are on, when we go to Xanadu, you don't have to upgrade to Xanadu. We'll make it backward compatible to Washington as much as we can. And there also are the other quarterly releases in May, in Q2 and Q3, or Q4. So we're able to iterate faster. Keep your ears open for that. A couple useful tips without image and photo. Make subscriptions as visible as you can. This is V1. I actually don't have the V2 version up here, but I do know it exists. On my groups, I like to add a related list that shows my users. If I am looking at a group, I want to see the subscriptions that are needed so that my group managers start connecting. There is a cost associated with these things. I don't know what the cost is, but there is one. So managing this, if you had the managing subscriptions for groups or the V2 version to come through, I just find it really useful to, again, make subscription management front and center. Understand that roles require subscriptions. This group has the subscription, and get that ingrained into your team. Build out that flow so they don't have to care. But if you're looking at the group, that you understand that something's there. The other one I like to add on the role, on sysuser role, there is already the contain roles. I like to have the contain by. So for my developers specifically, when they're creating new roles, when they're doing some inheritance, they understand I'm also getting this or getting that. When I add this here, I'm giving it to everybody it had before. And I also add the subscription roles. The subscription roles help me understand that ITIL requires an ITSM, is an ITSM fulfiller. It's going to need a license for that. Again, the more you can get people to understand that there is a cost, the more you can manage that cost. If you hide everything, then you can't be mad at them for not knowing something you didn't tell them. And a couple additional resources. So again, we talked about it: building flow for subscription management, mapping custom tables. There is a course in Now Learning, and I actually think this is the old version. The new version, I was just talking to the curriculum developer. I think one post GA for Washington, the new version should go out. So you can take it now, but it's been updated for subscription management 2.0. And once all the new courses make it next month, I think it'll be available, free, available for you, for anybody at your company. You can go take it. I have the link in here, but you just want to go type subscription management. And again, there's a new version for subscription management 2.0. There's an article about configuring groups. This cell has the old screenshots. We just saw how easy it is. Now, if you're on V1, you don't have some of that smart recommendation functionality, so there's a little bit more manual. This KB article walks you through the manual way of doing it. For V2, you just click on it and it tells you, hey, pick one of these groups. We had a slide about the differences between use verification reports and subscription management. That's explained in this KB as well. PowerPoint is nice, but there's a little bit more detail. And specifically, we walk through how do you tie out the numbers? How do you see that you are accounting for everything, even though the numbers, the end result is different? And then we are on to questions. And I'm going to actually stop on this slide. You're in the Platform Academy, but we have an Analytics Academy, Mobile Academy, Next Experience Academy, AI Academy, lots of several different academies that are out here. So I encourage you to join us for some of those other ones where we deep dive into many, many other topics that are important to all of us. Okay, let's see if we can answer a few questions. How do we determine if the user still needs a per user license ITSM or IRM? So whether IRM or ITSM needs them is based off of how we license it. So IRM, well, it'll be operator, or ITSM be fulfiller, or UU. So we see whether that license is, whether my subscription is licensed which way. Then the users, again, we're not looking at the users, we're looking at the groups, and then it'll pick up which group it needs. So assuming all of my users are getting their roles through groups, I map the groups, I don't have to worry about individual users. I had this one before about customer fulfiller roles. So right now, if we do an audit, our use verification team can identify those and put them in, so they'll show up in license roles. And we are looking to make that a closed loop system. So your instance will detect the customizations you've made, whether it's custom requester roles, modifying out of the box roles. It will identify those and put them into license roles and say, yeah, this license is this custom role is a fulfiller for ITSM. It is a requester for CSM. You actually can see that in App Engine. App Engine is using it in App Engine Management Center in Vancouver. And we're expanding that out and rolling it out to everything. Done. So yes, the management of groups, again, I do it in ServiceNow. If you want to do it in something else, that's fine. But again, you still have to figure out how that governance is going to work for you. And should there be is usage tracking out of the box on the platform? So the usage tracking out of the box is in the platform. There is user experience analytics on who's using what to go through. A lot of great information in there to understand my users. Again, the fulfilling with and fulfilling on is a bit challenging. So we're looking on how to do that stuff, but we're really geared towards mapping to how we sell, which is right to use. So our focus in subscription management is who has the right to use, because that's what we sell to come through. So it's a valid question. And again, we have some techniques to help you find people who do not appear to be exercising it, but we don't have anything on the current roadmap to show you who did exercise exactly how it's licensed. And again, to come through this, VP5, you should be able to go get this. Washington, you don't have a choice. That's what's there. That if you're before VP5, you don't have a choice to get in there. So you have that window. if you're on the current patch on Vancouver, you can get Subscription Management 2.0, and you should see the subscription overview. But if you haven't installed Subscription Management 2.0, then you'd see Subscription Management overview rather than Subscription Management and the workspace. But that's on Vancouver, you have to go get it, and on Washington, you do not. All right. That was well over. I don't see any more questions in here.
Thank you, Adam. Just want to address something that's just come up really quick in the chat. This academy that you're attending right now is called Platform Fundamentals. And this is not the same as the one that used to run last year. That was Platform Academy. Platform Academy has been renamed Workflow automation and anything that comes along with that. And then we're starting a new series this year called Platform Fundamentals, which will cover subscription management, upgrades, all kinds of fun, ATF, all kinds of fun, different, interesting things. And this takes place the third Thursday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I just wanted to clear that up. It looks like there may have been some communications that went out that this was supposed to start at 9 a.m. PST, but that's what happened last year. I know Lisa's on. I don't know if Lisa, you want to talk about what's going on with your academy really quick, since we still got some attendees. As it looks like you commented on what used to be the Platform Academy.
Yeah, I just posted the Workflow Academy since I saw it wasn't on the slide deck. On the slide, the Platform Academy that I ran last year and the years prior covered platform fundamentals topics and workflow automation topics, and I spun out like we kind of separated that one series into two. So now there's a Workflow Academy that I run. That's a video series with some live premieres and a quarterly webinar. And then Tara was so kind to take over the platform foundations part, covering ATF and all kinds of things that are relevant to platform owners and administrators and people who take care of these kinds of things.
Awesome. And then Thomas, do you mind explaining to Cindy where she can find out information on platform analytics, formerly known as performance analytics?
Yeah, so I can put in, I'll send her a link real quick. Are you talking about the out of the box one versus Pro?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will, let me grab a quick link and I'll put in that before we actually end here real quick. Let me grab that. Actually do this, Cindy, just shoot me an email. And then I can follow up with you.
Yes, we will be posting this recording. We get the recording back from our marketing team, so this will be posted as soon as we get it, probably in about a week.
All right, I just sent her my email, so yeah, I'll follow up with her.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined us today. This was exciting, our very first academy for this year, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Same time, same place. Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.